something maybe quieter but really critical in finance: check tampering. And just a quick note before we jump in, this script draws heavily on expert material prepared by Yazan.abogosh, a certified fraud examiner, with EasyPathUni using a template from the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, also reviewed by Yazan.abogosh. So,
Yeah.
solid sources. Now, think about it. We often just trust that money moves correctly, right? But these check tampering schemes, well, they exploit that trust. Our goal here is to take all that dense expert guidance on preventing and detecting this stuff and really pull out the key insights for you. Think of it as your shortcut to understanding how companies protect themselves and maybe how you can spot red flags too. Make you instantly more informed.
Yeah, and it's more relevant than you might think. Even with all the electronic payments, paper checks, there's still a major vulnerability. Understanding these controls isn't just for the finance pros. It's about realizing that, big frauds often hide in plain sight, exploiting simple things, overlook details.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Check tampering. It sounds kind of broad. What exactly are we talking about here before we get into, fixing it?
Right. It is broad, but our sources kind of break it down nicely into four main types. First up, you've got forged maker schemes.
Yeah.
This is basically where someone creates a fake check. They forge the signature of someone who is authorized to sign checks for the company.
So they're making it look like the company legitimately issued that check.
Exactly, faking the original authorization. Then second, there are forged endorsement schemes. Here, the check itself might be totally real, issued by the company, payable to the right person or business.
Okay.
But the fraudster intercepts it somehow, maybe seals it from the mail or even internally, and then they forge the signature of the person who was supposed to go to pay on the back so they can cash it or deposit it themselves.
So the money never gets where it was intended.
Precisely. The third type, altered pay schemes. This one's pretty direct. Someone gets their hands on a legitimate check before it's sent out, and they actually change the pay name.
Like physically change it on the check.
Yeah, maybe scraping off ink, using chemicals, or just cleverly altering Smith Co. to look like J. Smith, someone they can impersonate or an account they control.
Wow. Okay, that's sneaky. And the last one.
This one's maybe the most insidious authorized maker schemes. Here, there's no forgery needed. The person committing the fraud is someone who actually has the authority to sign checks.
Oh, so they're abusing their power.
Exactly. They write checks for their own benefit, maybe paying fake bills, overpaying themselves, you name it, using their legitimate signing authority.
That's tough because on the surface, the check looks perfectly fine, doesn't it? Signed by someone who's allowed to sign.
Right. It's a breach of trust from the inside, which often makes it harder to spot initially.
So these aren't just hypothetical risks. These are real things happening in businesses, big and small.
Absolutely. Every day. These four categories cover the main ways check fraud happens.
Okay, so that really paints a picture of the threat. Now, knowing what we're up against, how do organizations actually stop these schemes before they even start? Let's talk prevention.
Right. Prevention is key. And it's about building layers, like a fortress. It starts with the basics. Physical security of the blank checks themselves. Our sources are clear. Treat unused checks like cash. Lock them up. Safe. Vault secure cabinet. Very limited access.
Because even a blank check is valuable to a fraudster.
Yeah, hugely valuable. And another simple thing, if you close a bank account, destroy the leftover checks immediately. Don't just toss them.
Makes sense. Okay, so locking up the blanks. What's next? Technology. Thanks.
Yep, both. Technology first. Where you can, using electronic payments, ACH, wire transfers, just reduces the opportunity for paper check fraud altogether. Less paper, less risk.
Seems obvious when you say it.
It does, but it's a conscious shift.
Yeah.
And when you do use paper checks, get them from reputable printers. Make sure they have security features.
Like what kind of features?
Things like high-resolution microprinting tiny text that's hard to copy, special security inks that react to chemicals, maybe watermarks, or even UV ink that you can only see under a blacklight.
So it makes them harder to fake or alter convincingly?
Exactly. It raises the bar for the fraudster. And then working with your bank. This is huge. Set up positive pay controls. This is probably one of the most effective tools.
How does positive pay work exactly?
Basically, every day, your company sends the bank an electronic file listing all the checks you've legitimately issued. Check number, payee, amount. Then when checks come into the bank for payment, the bank compares them against your list.
So if a check shows up that's not on the list,
the bank flags it. Says, hey, this wasn't authorized, and they won't pay it without checking with you first. It stops unauthorized checks, altered checks, counterfeit checks, dead in their tracks.
That sounds incredibly powerful, like an external guard checking everyone at the gate.
It really is. You can also work with the bank to set maximum payable amounts on checks, things like that. More layers.
Okay, so physical security, tech features, bank controls like positive pay. But what about the people inside the company, that authorized maker scheme you mentioned, that relies on internal trust being broken?
You absolutely hit the nail on the head. Internal controls, the human element, that's where the real discipline comes in. And the absolute cornerstone is separation of duties.
We hear that term a lot in finance and accounting. Break it down in this context.
Okay, so it means the person who, say, prepares the check for payment, enters the invoice, prints the check should not be the same person who signs it.
Right. Makes sense. One person prepares, another approves signs.
But it goes deeper. The person who signs it shouldn't be the one who mails it out. And neither of those people should be the one reconciling the bank statement at the end of the month.
Wow, okay, so you need potentially 3 or 4 different people involved in the life cycle of a single payment.
Ideally, yes. For good control. Preparing, signing, mailing, reconciling. Different hands, different eyes at each step. If one person can do it all, that's just asking for trouble.
That seems like it could be challenging, especially for smaller organizations.
It absolutely can be. But it's that important. You have to find ways to segregate those functions as much as possible. Even small separations help.
Okay, separation of duties. What else on the human side?
Dual signatures for checks over a certain amount. Say, anything over $5,000 needs 2 authorized signers. Adds another layer of approval.
Makes sense. Collusion is harder than solo fraud.
Much harder. Also, limit who even has signing authority. Don't give it out lightly. Just a few specific trusted individuals.
And basic don'ts, like bad habits to avoid.
Oh yeah, top of the list. Never, ever sign blank checks. Seriously, it sounds basic, but people under pressure sometimes do it for convenience. It's a massive risk.
Just handing someone a loaded gun, essentially.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Also, try to prohibit handwritten checks if possible. They're easier to alter or forge. If you must use manual checks, insist on permanent ink. No pencils.
Right. Little things. What about
Yeah.
signature stamps?
Limit access to those severely. Keep them locked up. They're almost as dangerous as signed blank checks if they fall into the wrong hands.
Okay. And voided checks, what happens to those? Just tear them up?
Not quite. There needs to be a proper process. Someone independent should authorize the void. The check itself should be clearly marked defaced so it can't be misused, and then either destroy it securely or keep it filed safely. Crucially, a copy or notation should go with the bank reconciliation so you can account for every single check number in the sequence.
So even the mistakes are controlled.
Exactly. No gaps.
It really is a layered defense, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
that multi-lock safe idea. Physical locks on the checks, tech locks, bank locks, and then these internal human process locks, separation of duties, dual signatures, no blank checks.
That's a great analogy. Each control is like another tumbler in the lock. A fraudster has to figure out how to defeat multiple layers, often involving different people. It makes their job much, much harder.
But, you know, even the best locks sometimes get picked, right? Or maybe someone finds a key that was left lying around. So what happens if prevention fails? How do you detect that something's gone wrong? What are the signs, the red flags?
Right. Detection is the next critical phase. Prevention isn't ideal, but detection catches what slips through. And the number one detection control: diligent, timely bank reconciliation.
Doing the bank rec promptly, why is timing so important?
Well, partly because memories fade, but also because of banking rules. The Uniform Commercial Code generally gives you only about 30 days to report things like forgeries or alterations to the bank.
Hardly 30 days.
Roughly, yeah. If you wait too long, the bank might say, sorry, you didn't report it in time, and the loss could be yours, not theirs. So reconcile immediately when the statement arrives.
That's a huge incentive to stay on top of it. And who should do the reconciling?
Someone independent. Remember, separation of duties. The person reconciling should not have been involved in issuing or signing the checks. They need fresh eyes.
And what are they looking for during that reconciliation?
They're checking everything matches, of course, but also looking for weird stuff. Missing check numbers. Checks listed out of sequence. Duplicate check numbers appearing on the statement. Those are immediate red flags. They should also be looking at the actual canceled checks or images of them that come back with the statement. Looking for any signs of alteration, comparing signatures to known authorized ones, forgeries.
So, detailed review of the actual transactions. What about the payees?
Absolutely. Scrutinize the payees. Compare the payee name on the cleared check image against the payee name recorded in your accounting system in the cash disbursements journal. Do they match?
What if they don't match?
Big red flag. Also, look for unusual payee names. Handwritten names when they're usually typed. Payee is not on your approved vendor list. And like we said, any checks made out simply to cash. Huge warning sign.
Yeah, cash seems inherently risky.
Very. Also look for duplicate payments to the same vendor. Or maybe checks going to the same vendor but suddenly being mailed to a different address. Could be a sign. Funds are being diverted.
Okay, so reconciliation, checking canceled checks, scrutinizing payees. Are there more maybe proactive things you can do, like investigation techniques?
Definitely. One simple thing is to periodically rotate the duties of employees who handle checks and coding. Just moving people around can disrupt ongoing schemes or make people less comfortable trying something.
Keeps everyone on their toes, maybe.
Kinda, yeah. Also, listen to your vendors. If a vendor calls complaining they haven't been paid, but your records show the check was issued and cashed, investigate that immediately. That's a classic sign of intercepted checks or forged endorsements.
Good point. The complaint itself is a detection control.
Exactly. Here's another one. Sounds a bit like detective work. Review canceled checks for signatures of people who are actually out of the office on vacation, sick leave, on the date the check was supposedly signed.
Huh. That seems like a clumsy mistake for a fraudster to make.
It happens. People get sloppy, or maybe they predate checks. Also, look closely at handwriting. If a canceled check looks like the preparation, the signature, and the endorsement on the back are all in the same handwriting,
Uh-oh. One person doing everything.
very likely a solo fraudster handling the whole process. Big red flag.
Any other sort of odd signs?
Yeah, look for excessive numbers of voided checks. A few voids now and then is normal, but a whole lot. Someone might be voiding checks in the system to cover up checks they're actually stealing and cashing.
Sneaky.
Also, maybe monitor employees who seem to be making a lot of changes to vendor details, addresses, bank accounts, or someone whose workspace maybe has practice signatures or indentation marks on pads underneath checks.
Wow. Okay, getting into physical evidence there.
Sometimes it's there. And then there's the behavioral side.
Ah, the human signs.
Yeah. Is an employee who handles payments or signs checks suddenly living way beyond their means? New car, lavish trips, unexplained wealth. It's not proof, of course, but it's definitely a red flag worth noting, especially if other controls seem weak.
That makes sense. Putting all these detection methods together, it seems like a lot to keep track of. How do organizations make sure these checks and balances are actually working and not just, procedures written down somewhere?
That really boils down to two things. Independent review and a strong culture of vigilance. The controls only work if they're consistently applied, and if the reviews, like the bank rec, the audit of canceled checks, are done by someone truly independent and knowledgeable. They need to know what they're looking for.
So training is important.
Crucial. And management's setting the tone, making it clear that controls matter, that questioning things is encouraged, that oversight is real. Without that commitment from the top and genuine independence in the reviews, the best procedures can just become box-ticking exercises.
Right. It's about making it real, not just theoretical.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Our deep dive shows check tampering. It's got layers, right? From simple forgeries to complex betrayals of trust by authorized insiders. But the good news, based on our sources, is that strong prevention physical security, smart use of tech like positive pay, and especially robust internal controls like separation of duties combined with really diligent detection, looking for those red flags.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference. Understanding all these pieces, it's not just for the experts. It really helps you become more aware of financial security, whether it's your business or even just your personal accounts.
Yeah, what's really striking, I think, is that even though the fraud schemes can seem complicated, the ways to protect against them often come back to, well, good habits, common sense, and just being consistently watchful. Which kind of leads to a final thought maybe for you listening, thinking about your own finances or maybe your workplace. What's one small practical step you could take based on what we've discussed to apply these principles of control and vigilance?
That's a great question. Maybe it's finally setting up those alerts on your bank account or asking a question about payment processes at work or even just being a bit more careful with where you keep your own checkbook. Applying even one small piece of this makes you safer. Definitely something to think about. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep getting well informed.